Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we have entered day 110 of the ongoing war between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. And not a lot has changed, obviously, since yesterday. We continue to see this massive Russian pressure campaign in the east, and as you can see from the map, things are becoming more and more precarious for Ukrainian forces. One, in the positioning of Ukrainian forces in terms of as the Russians continue its advance into the eastern Donbass, and two, the supply situation for Ukrainian forces. We are going to rapidly get to a point, unfortunately for Ukrainian forces, in which a lot of its units are just completely insufficiently supplied and will no longer be able to conduct operations in the field. And in all probability, we'll have to conduct a tactical retreat, and that's going to be difficult because they are going to face interdiction efforts by Russian forces as they make that tactical fallback, or which could become a all-out retreat. But what I'm going to do is go back till basically the start of June, late May, and you can kind of see what's happening here. And we're May 30th right now, so pay attention to kind of what's happening in the direction, this broad front operation that's taking place just to the west of Severodonetsk towards Lyman and Izum. And then we're going to kind of fast forward things and also pay attention to what's happening down here in Popasna. So think of it as a positioning battle where we're kind of seeing this very slow, methodical Russian drive that is not utilizing exploitive large-scale maneuver operations, but more or less large-scale artillery operations to target and kill Ukrainian units in the field. And that's what it's trying to do, and that's why you're seeing the incredibly high casualty rates that are being reported by the Ukrainian Forces Command as we speak. And I know that there are some YouTube channels that would say, well, because the Russians are attacking, then inherently they are going to have 3 times the losses or greater losses than what the Ukrainians are sustaining. Now, the problem with that is we're not seeing a lot of outside of the scope of Severodonetsk. We're not seeing a large maneuver elements of the Russian military take part in this conflict. We're seeing, again, a lot of standoff tactics that are being used by Russian forces now to alleviate the propensity for casualties that the Russian forces were taking. So right now, it's very, very possible over the course of the last few weeks, Ukrainians were probably taking more casualties than actually the Russian forces. Now, within Severodonetsk, that may be a little bit different, but that, again, that's a localized battle that is taking place in a relatively small city. So obviously, within the confines of that localized battle, yeah, the Russians are probably taking heavier losses. But along the entire front line, running from Izum all the way down to Popasna, at this point, I doubt very seriously the Russians are taking as many casualties as the Ukrainians, because again, you got to understand that the Russians are using tactical air assets, cruise missile strikes, and a lot of heavy weapons, and they have a lot more of these heavy weapons than the Ukrainians do. So inherently, as you have this battle of firepower taking place, the organization or the state that has the heavier firepower is going to usually inflict, in a ranged combat, artillery duels, the likes we're seeing now, compounding that with the use of fixed tactical aircraft, helicopter gunships, Mi-24 Hinds, K-52 Alligators, Mi-28 Havocs. That is, and you don't see that being deployed by Ukrainian forces. And unfortunately, that is what's causing a lot of the Ukraine. So I'm going to fast forward it right now from May 30th onward, and just kind of pay attention. Look at Popasna. Look at what's happening here near Izum, and you can kind of see the way this is starting to shape up. And you can clearly see what the Russians are trying to do. It's not exploitive maneuver operations. It is broad frontal firepower operations, what you're seeing. And right now, the Russians are bearing down on Sloviansk, and I assume that once we see Russian forces take control of Severodonetsk, which will probably happen in the next few days, and push all the way to the Donets River, which is right here. I know some people were saying they couldn't see any river, so it's very small. It's a small river, but nonetheless, it's something in which the Russians would have to conduct bridging operations over to get to the other side. Now, they've already gotten to the other side in certain areas. So this area down here to the south, they're kind of moving toward Lysychansk in this area, and then obviously they're also pressing towards Lysychansk from the what you could call from the rear. So they're going to be attacking Lysychansk from the right flank, and then also they're going to be, meaning the Russians are going to be coming up to the rear of Lysychansk as well, while you're going to see a lot of heavy artillery being fired from the eastern bank of the Donets against Ukrainian forces. So very, very tough situation for Ukrainian forces. I wish I could give, and I know I do, obviously there are quite a few Ukrainian supporters and observers who visit the channel, and if I had better news to give you, I would, and I'm again trying to be unbiased as possible. Positional battles, yeah, and that are taking place in some areas such as Severodonetsk and in some other areas that we've seen. Ukrainian forces are putting up an admirable fight. They are fighting very proficiently. Obviously, some of Ukraine's better units have taken a lot of casualties in recent weeks. So so that level of proficiency probably. What we're seeing now is a bit different than what we saw earlier in the conflict, meaning the Ukrainian forces were probably fighting a bit better because they hadn't taken the kind of losses that they've taken up until now. And so that's just what's happening on the battlefield, and it's inherent to the nature of war. Now, possibly as some of these territorial units and these reserve units are blooded and put into the fight, and they survive, and they'll learn from their mistakes and get better inherently, just as we're kind of seeing that from Russian forces as well. But again, the problem is just the sheer amount of firepower that the Russians are bringing bear against Ukrainian forces, especially in this eastern area of operation, in this Sloviansk, Severodonetsk, Bakhmut triangle that we're seeing. But and then also you have the deep operations as well, in which Ukrainian forces are being hit deep inside of the Ukraine, and that the Russians are targeting those supply depots, those Western arms shipments that are coming in to assist the Ukrainian military. And it's not a lot. I mean, it's not you're not looking at a huge amount of equipment right now that is coming in from the West that would really make a huge amount of difference. Earlier in the campaign, those anti-tank guided weapon systems and the weapon systems that the Ukrainian military possessed of Soviet origin and its own production, such as the Stunka, were very effective in providing defensive countermeasures against the Russian exploitive maneuver campaign that was taking place. But we're not seeing that now. And we're seeing this positional firepower battle take place, in which the Ukrainians don't have the same opportunity to engage these columns of Russian armored vehicles. And the Russians right now are very, very much focused on identifying Ukrainian units in the field and then pummeling them with, again, tactical air assets or long-range artillery, and that's just what we're seeing right now. Not much as well. We're continuing to see tit-for-tat battles taking place kind of in the southwest. There had been some anticipation and some reports of limited Ukrainian offensive operations near Kherson, east of Kherson, and that continues. And we'll run a quick map, kind of a fast forward it from past tense, and we'll go back to May, and you can kind of see you can see a bit of, again, very minute, like here you can kind of see just to the north, just to the west of Kherson, you can, right there, do you see it? You can kind of see that little push by Ukrainian forces. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, is it what is it going to do? It's going to expend the much needed resources of men and material that could be supporting ongoing operations in the east. But unfortunately for the Ukrainians, to move forces over the Dnieper River and then position them in the east, it's probably going to just cause the Ukrainian military more harm than good. And then obviously these limited offensive operations by Ukrainian forces, again, are just going to expend much needed resources. So we could get to the point where, and it's probably the Russians' goal at this point, is to just wear down the Ukrainian military, where it just doesn't have the ability to perform in the field anymore, and then you see a general collapse of the Ukrainian armed forces. And I know that's tough to hear, again, for some of the supporters of the Ukrainian military, but you got to understand that the Russian state still has its institutions of resupply. It still has manufacturing institutions and facilities. It has depots. It has a way to continue to augment its existing forces and strengthen, reinforce its existing forces. Now, obviously we've heard that there's not a national mobilization underway in Russia, but more or less regional mobilization taking place, which inherently is going to expand the Russian force construct in this conflict. But at the same time, the Russians do still have that ability, which the Ukrainians do not. Yes, the Ukrainians can recruit a million possible fighting age males to join its military, but if those a million fighting age males and women don't have access to weapons and more importantly ammunition, then what good does it do them? And that's the challenge right now, especially east of the Dnieper River, that we're slowly starting to see, and we're going to kind of get to that tipping point where some Ukrainian units just don't have any more ammunition. What are they going to do? They're going to throw stones and rocks at Russia, maybe, but that's not going to help them in the long run. And but that's ultimately the kind of the situation the Ukrainian forces are looking at. And I don't know if the West is going to be able to supply the type of ammunition that is needed by the Ukrainian military. I mean, look, right now they have just over 100 of those M777 howitzers of 155 millimeter, and the West has to supply all that ammunition. Furthermore, the West, as I've said in other videos, is having difficulty supplying that 152, 122, 130 millimeter ammo that the Ukrainian military normally uses for the vast majority of its fighting forces in the field. And the Russians are just kind of systematically destroying those supply depots, those units in the field, which is making it harder and harder for the Ukrainian military to sustain its stuff in the field. So I hope that makes sense. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the comment section. I'll do my best to answer. But right now, just based on the positional battle that is taking place, and you can kind of see what you're looking at right now, and compounding that, the supply situation is just, it's really a tough road to hoe for Ukrainian forces east of the Dnieper River at this point. Better position probably towards Odessa, Mykolaiv, Zaporizhia, but out here things are going to get rough pretty quick for Ukrainian forces, unfortunately, But that's what we have. More to come very, very soon. Have a good day.